So moved.
Support. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, we
Hi, Phil. Hi, everybody. Aye. Aye.
we have 4 to 5.
No, we got 5 out of 5. Mahoney's in here also.
Oh, is it? Okay. Any public comment?
That bright light was coming from me.
Public comment? You said no public.
No public comment.
Okay, we have no public comment. Move on to item 4. Closure and report.
So moved. Support.
We have a motion by
Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Okay. Item B. One appointments for the Brown. Township Supervisor Representative, term expires March
I'm gonna go with Hal.
23. Current member is Jim Dunn. He's vacating his position. Applicant is Pete Jancic. Are there any other nominations?
I nominate
Do we have a second? Do we need a second?
Second.
Okay,
Support.
all in favor of Mr. Jancic? Please
Aye.
indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's passed unanimously. That's the only appointments we have. We got a enterprise group, EDA report, semi-annual. Anybody here from enterprise group? Online? Anybody out there for the enterprise group report? Guess we'll just go off the written. Does anybody have comments or questions or discussion on the enterprise group's report? I'll take a motion and support that we accept it.
Support.
We have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Signal.
Aye.
Aye.
Phil,
Yes.
Phil, I realize you accepted the report, and I thank you for that, but the enterprise group, for some reason, is an attendee, and she has her hand up right now.
She can speak.
Michelle, do you think you can tag her in?
We don't see her.
She's in.
Can every,
Go ahead, Debbie.
Should say, it says Deb Kelly, but it's really, oh, where'd you go?
But she's not showing up on the screen. And I called.
See her there.
Here I am.
Okay, we got her. All
here
right.
I am.
Welcome.
Hi, I am so sorry. I'm having technical difficulties this morning.
I can understand
I
that.
know you've all seen the report. You have the memo in front of you. Does anyone have any questions or concerns for me this morning?
Board? Rodney, Danielle?
Nope, I'm good.
I guess they're happy with the written presentation. Pretty straightforward and clear, other than the airport, and Steve would do that one. Did we vote on accepting this? Okay. All right, anything else you have to say, Debbie?
Nope, just I'm glad that everyone is doing well, and thank you for always welcoming our monthly reports, and I will see you again next month.
All right, stay safe. Move on to item D. Human Resources, this would be Police Officers Association of Michigan contract. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. This is asking for the full board to move this tentative agreement with our corrections deputies, who are now represented by POAM as of 1/1/21, and it is in line with all the others that we have put in front of the board. So I'm just asking for approval to move this on and take any questions.
Mr. Chair, I would move recommendation of approval to the full board.
Need a second on that? Who was that? Who seconded it?
Mine.
Show the sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Item 4E.
Hello. I'm sure you're surprised as I am that I'm here giving this report. I wasn't sure if anyone was aware, but on June 3rd, we canceled the fair. But I'm using the same format that I normally do every year because we have had a few things happen in prepping for next year's fair. So let me get my little doohickey out here. Okay, and I don't mean to be funny, but I just was using the format from the other one, but you can see big zeros for everything. But the first sad thing happened because the Beer Fest, which is a big revenue source for the fair in regards to funding our premium account, we were all set up in the event center. It was fantastic. It was going to be all indoors in the big new beautiful building. And then Mike called me with the sad news at 4 o'clock. It wasn't going to happen. So we blame him. But and the nice thing is I had sold over $20,000 worth of tickets. Everybody, except for a small handful, decided to keep their tickets for next year. So I'm praying and hoping that even though we rescheduled it for September, that we can host it in the normal timetable of March. So those folks are hanging onto their tickets to use those, along with the vendors that had already prepaid for their booth rental. So happy about that. We are very blessed that we were able to get it done in regards to what 21 fair is going to look like, is duplicate close to the 20 fair. It's actually going to be a few more wonderful things that we're going to do because we've had a little more time to throw some things together. But the big talent that we have worked hard to get to come to Jackson with the support of Mike working with our promoter, and Toby Keith actually was the first one that didn't even hesitate and said, make it work in my schedule for 2021. So very happy about that. So our lineup looks exactly the same, along with our free acts that we have. They've all agreed that their deposits will carry over to 21, and so that was very nice too. Because the bottom little line does show that we had some deposits that were non-refundable, and to the tune of a little over $60,000. So the fair took a hit. We're a little in the hole starting 2021, but I'm hoping that Deb can find a way to make some of that COVID money work our way, but right now it doesn't seem to be, but who knows what might happen.
You're looking at it, we're got a head start on next year.
There you go, yeah. But we did bring a little fair to the fairgrounds. We did host 3 drive-through fair food events. The first one, we had over 1,400 cars come through, and so people were just thrilled to pieces, even though we held that one in June, so it was a little earlier than our normal fair. We did 7 days, which would have been the same for our fair had we hosted it in August. And by the time we were all said and done, we netted over $14,000 with those. But our food vendors were really the winners too, because they appreciated. Matter of fact, Jerry Price from Fist Fries called me again on Friday and just thanked me again for holding those and giving them the opportunity to have 2 or 3 trailers at every one of our events. So that was nice. Our vendors the majority of our vendors have been with us for 30 plus years. Jerry has been with us for 55 years at the Jackson County Fair. So he definitely appreciates what we do for him, and we appreciate what he's done for us. So these are just some of our little hits that we did on our Facebook, which we had a Facebook campaign, and it really, we had a lot of hits on our page, and Stacy Curtis in our office is the one who runs that, and she did a really nice job. But we did have some time before, we had some things in the works before we actually had to cancel the fair, and that was enlarging our backstage area. Because Toby Keith and Leonard Skinner, between the two of them, will have 14-plus buses and semis coming in for the show, and we just couldn't fit them in the backstage area. And we feel that this is going to be, this is something we'll be looking at, this level of shows for the future. And I think and I pray that we'll prove that when the fair does happen. And I kind of just did round numbers in regards to our fair expenses, and that does include, like, the deposits that were non-refundable were for the big things, the stage, the stage and the screens, those kind of things. There was no opportunity for carryover deposits, and that's in the industry, that's standard. I can tell you the industry is very much praying that we will be back to doing live shows, because I've been on a number of Zooms with the entertainment world, and we're a drop in the bucket compared to the losses that the industry itself has hit. And there's some fairs that will not open again because of what COVID did. And it's really sad. It's really too bad, because every fair that goes under, it just makes it that much harder for those of us that are going to stay strong. And we do appreciate the support we get from our Board of Commissioners and our administrator for the fair, knowing how important it is to our community. So our fair revenues were about $14,300, and that was from the food drive-through. So if you don't have any other questions.
Questions for Commissioner Pulaski?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry I said something kind of out of turn here, but it does seem to me that lost deposits and other costs that are directly related to not having a fair might be considered a cost of the COVID outbreak.
And that's what we're hoping for.
And so I simply ask administration to try and do. Now, maybe Deb can make her magic work or not, but it does seem to me that's part of the costs we as a county incurred as a result of COVID. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we, back in August, if you recall, we were advised we were eligible for about $390,000 from MEDC through CDBG, and it is CARES funding, so it is for COVID. At the onset, it was very hopeful. Cecilia and I had many conversations. We were very hopeful that we would be able to utilize the $390,000. I've dealt with MEDC before. They're very strict in their grants and their requirements, and that's 2.5 months later, that's what we're realizing, is that they are very strict. At first, they told us it would be for anything that was unbudgeted COVID related. That was the first phone call I was on. If it was unbudgeted and it's a direct correlation to a COVID expense, then we would be eligible for reimbursement of that $390,000. And now it's down to the point of it's very particular. So for example, one of our very first cases was at the courthouse, if you recall, and the facilities department took, I believe it was 2 or 3 days to clean it. It was overtime for the staff, and there was cleaning equipment that was involved and a spray, and MEDC has advised me that the only portion that will be eligible for reimbursement for that is the public portion of the courthouse. So they will take a fraction of that reimbursement because it has to be public facing. So we're now down to the point 2.5 months later where it's very particular, they're very specific, and I was advised, like I said, that we basically have to figure out how much of the courthouse is public space, and they'll pay for the public space, but not the employee space. And so Cecilia's been working on what we anticipate we will be able to get. We're hoping to reach maybe $100,000. I'm not sure we're going to get even to that. We'll see, but now that we've got an idea of how particular they're going to be, I don't anticipate we're going to reach the 390, and neither does Cecilia. She's been working for several weeks on all of the expenses that we've had, so.
Earl, go ahead.
Thanks once again, Mr. Chair. And so I know the staff are working very hard to make it all work. It certainly seems to me we could not possibly have budgeted to lose deposits. Okay, that's an unbudgeted cost, and I would, I simply ask, press that forward. That what you lost was a deposit that would have gone for a cost for a show that actually had occurred. We don't budget to just lose money because of COVID. So I know you're going to do the best you can. I'm perhaps beating a dead horse, but I would simply.
Yeah, thank you. And we will. I've asked the same question a couple of times now. Once, another example, the courthouse, of course, because they're doing all their meetings from Zoom, most of them now, again, because they reverted back to phase 2. The court recorders needed an additional monitor. They only had one monitor because when they're in court, they watch the court recording equipment, which is electronic as well. So we had to purchase additional monitors for the court clerk, for a lot of the clerks as well as the court recorders. And it's obviously very specific related to COVID. They have to watch a Zoom and the court recording now. And we were told no on those as well. So they're it's been very difficult, and I know Cecilia and we keep getting our balloons burst, but we keep pushing and keep asking, and we're plugging away, but they've denied already quite a few things that we were for sure that they would approve, and they're just very particular. So we'll keep trying, and we've got through the end of the year. It goes till December 31st, so we'll keep trying and keep pushing away.
Are those reimbursements coming from the state of Michigan or the federal government?
It's the federal government. It's through the CARES Act, which is a lot of the grants are coming from the CARES Act, but it's being overseen in our state through MEDC. So that's where the money is filtering from, is MEDC.
Okay, any further questions? Any questions for Denise? Thank you for your report.
Thanks.
Okay, next up we have Parks, item F. This would be a resolution of support for the Mike Levine Lakelands Trail Extension. Welcome.
Good morning, thank you. Well, earlier this year, the DNR opened a trail from Stockbridge to Hawkins Road in Henrietta Township, and they're working now to extend that to the prison, basically at Cooper and Parnell. So they're in the process of applying for Transportation Alternatives Program funding through MDOT, and they're basically looking for, typically it'd be a letter of support, but this application requires a full resolution that would strengthen their application. So this trail project is part of the Iron Bell Trail. It's part of the Great Lake to Lake Trail, Route 1, and it is identified as a top priority in the non-motorized plan that was approved earlier this summer.
Questions? Corey?
I see there's no financial impact to the county. Who is providing the funds to make this happen?
Yeah, it's several grants. This would be the largest grant that would go towards it, but it's the DNR is coming up with the funding.
Anybody else with questions on this resolution we need? Tony?
Good morning.
Good morning.
The Iron Bell Trail, the maps here, I cannot enlarge them enough to see in much detail at all. I know the Iron Bell Trail goes east of the river, east of the fairgrounds, for about half the length of that block. Is this extension of the Iron Bell Trail extending that trail east of the river yet? Or is this the part of it that is proposed to go through the fairgrounds?
No, this portion just goes from Cooper and Parnell north to Hawkins Road, about 4 miles. So separate project from anything near the city.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, we need a motion and support to send this resolution to the full board.
So moved.
Support?
Support. This is Nolan.
Questions out there? Okay, we have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
Okay, we still have another one here. Denise, you're going to do this one. Okay, carnival attraction contract.
Right, this is, we're coming to, we finally finalized everything for the contract to do our midway, and we had a couple folks give the RFP, and one of them is who we currently have our contract that runs out. They didn't obviously do the 20, but that would have been their final year. So we're asking that you support what our recommendation is, and is that we go with Mid-America. They have had longevity here with the Jackson County Fair. So if you go through the back of the staff report, kind of shows the difference between the two contracts, and it's pretty clear that Mid-America, why they're our choice. And also, there is one caveat that kind of goes with this, and that's the $20,000, and that was something that, on a whim, we had discussion with our new layout, which they love, our new carnival layout. The only thing that they wished is that we would have some sort of pavement, whatever that means, but hard pavement. And so they have offered to also include in their contract additional $20,000 to go directly toward that contract. And I have been talking with Christopher, and he's coming up with a game plan for us, but he was really happy to hear that we had that kind of seed money for that. So we should be able to make that happen.
Any questions on the contract? Denise,
Yep, I've got a couple questions whenever you get a chance to.
okay. Go ahead.
Good morning, Denise. How you doing?
Good morning.
Good. My first question is, I see this is listed under parks, and I don't recall this coming through the fair board. I'm just curious, like, why this hasn't come before the fair board is my first question. What?
Yeah, it did, but it was quite a long time ago. That's why it's taken so long.
Okay.
And I'll look up and see what that date was, Commissioner, because I'm not 100% sure, but we did bring this to talk to the fair board in regards to. And we had those three.
I know, I do recall that we've talked about it. I just don't recall recently seeing this, and then for it to be coming from the parks board opposed to coming from the fair board is why I had questions about it. It just seems like this is a contract that deals directly with the fair itself. I'm just curious the direction of where it would be coming from, and if the other fair board members had the opportunity to review this before it goes to the Board of Commissioners.
Yeah, they did. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the fair board actually did approve it when we did take it before the fair board. And I'll get that information for you, Commissioner.
No, don't worry about it. I do remember us discussing it. I just didn't remember it.
And I wasn't sure why.
I didn't know if this had any changes or if this was a different contract or what. But I do recall us having a discussion about it. So it's no need for that. No need for you to look up the date or anything. If you say we approved it, then I'm good with that. The next question I had would be, and this wouldn't be for you, Denise, but for administration. At one point when we were discussing having the midway paved at the fairgrounds, I made a request for us to find out what the cost would be, and that was quite a while ago. And I'm just curious if anybody's looked into what that cost would be. I know that this has been a long discussion, or a long time coming, and kind of a weird time, but it has been quite a while since we requested that information to be found out exactly what the cost would be, because at the time when Mid-America initially offered that $20,000, the comment was that we didn't know exactly what kind of impact that $20,000 would have on a project like putting pavement on the midway. So I'm just curious where we are with what the cost is going to be on that.
Hi, Commissioner. This is Christopher. We did actually do an analysis on that, and I believe the numbers are around 60 or 80,000 to do the full Midway. But I think what we settled on was doing a pilot project with our recycled plastics incorporated in it. So that meant that J.C. Dodd, maybe our own crews, could even place that material and pave the Midway under a pilot project where we test out the material. But it's also kind of an attractive thing to do at Keeley with some special signage acknowledging that we're incorporating these plastics on this pilot project, that kind of thing. So the donation was actually enough, as we calculated, to possibly cover all the materials, and then we would just provide the services of placing the material, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. And then last thing, Denise, last question that I would have, and I don't know if this would be a better question for you to answer or maybe administration to answer this one as well. In the contract, it states that $20,000 would be given over in $5,000 increments year over year until the $20,000 is paid, pending that the contract isn't terminated with them between now and when that final payment is made. Just want to just ask if you guys are okay with that being in the contract. Is that okay for you guys in your opinion of the way they laid out, the way they want to pay that $20,000?
Well, I know it just from my conversations with Blake, that was the advice of his attorney, just because he said, we give $20,000, the first year, and then for some reason, we terminate the contract with him. So that was on the request of his attorney, then it went to our attorney again, and so, that was scrutinized that way too. But I'm fine with it. We've had them since 2004. Blake has been a wonderful partner with us, and prior to him was his dad. So I have a lot of confidence in that we would see them for the duration of this contract, no doubt.
And if I may, I really don't have a problem with it either. They've been a very good vendor for us for years. I don't anticipate us having a problem. And frankly, the $20,000 in the scope of things, especially in light of the sizes of our budgets and the numbers we approve all the time, is not a lot of money. Not that we don't want it. We do, and we appreciate it. But over 4 years, I don't see that as a problem.
Okay, thank you. One last question that just popped up in my mind that I forgot I had also. And I don't know, maybe this is just something I overlooked in the last time we renewed their contract. In there it also states that they have the right to bring as many concessionaire stands as they want to. Is that normal? Is that like language that moved over from our last contract with them into this contract also?
It is. They have a certain amount of vendors that they're allowed to have, so that is that standard, yeah.
Okay, I just was curious about that. Thank you. Thank you, Denise, and thank you, Mike and Christopher as well for that information. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. I know that Midway's been, or Mid-American has been good for us, and it's been a good relationship. But if COVID carries on, are we sure they're going to be there for us in August? I mean, beyond their control. I mean,
I would venture to say that, in all honesty, if Midway goes away, if they fail, they're one of the largest. There will be no more fairs and festivals if they fail. I mean, there's going to be scraps left over. So I can't imagine that they would fail, or if they did file bankruptcy, that someone else would pick them up, because they're one of the best.
Yeah, and Blake and I have had those conversations too, and he feels very strongly. They are an international company, so they have equipment in business all over the world, but he feels very confident that
COVID is all over the world too.
Right.
Like I say, beyond their control.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Just more of on a personal level question. Okay, Tony?
Hi, Denise.
Morning.
Page 71 shows the layout of the fair, and it says 2019 layout. So they're proposing to, in 2021, use the exact same layout that they used in 2019?
It'll be the exact same layout as they had for our last fair, yes.
Okay.
With the big horseshoe in the middle of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
And pretty much in the same location.
Correct.
Very good, thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? If not, we need a motion and support to approve the contract with North American Midway Entertainment. Send it to the full board.
So moved.
Full board?
Support.
Okay, we have a motion support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Next up, we have item H. Cecilia, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So in front of you is the approval for the 2020 budget amendments. It's various funds. Basically, what we're doing with this budget amendment is we're recording any related revenue and expenditures related to COVID. And we're also trying to, with this budget amendment, fund various projects too. All the detail regarding the budget amendments are attached for your review. And just, if you have any questions, just let me know. In 3B, it does break down the increases of the revenue expenses based on the various funds and how it affects it, the overall impact of the budget amendment. I can tell you next month there will also be additional COVID budget amendment that I'll also bring forth based on the grant that we were just talking about with MEDC. Because we'll need to record the revenue and the expenditures for that too. Department and Agent also has some COVID response grants that she's also going to be asking for budget amendments too. So there'll be some other ones next month too. But this is the biggest one, more detail, as you can see. A lot of analysis went into it. So.
Questions? Commissioner Pileski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions and perhaps observations. I note that it appears we're reducing our revenue sharing number. I assume that's the state of Michigan revenue sharing number from 3.5 million to 2.675 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what happened there was that they gave us a replacement for the August revenue sharing. And that's the amount that we didn't need. So I needed to move it from that budget line item to, it's part of the increase for that August revenue sharing is my first attachment. This is the second attachment where I'm actually reducing it, so.
I noticed, do I note with pleasure that in general fund, our planned use of fund balance is declining from 1.2 million to zero?
That is the plan. That is our hope. That's what we want to happen.
Okay. On the first attachment, I think, I see most of the budget adjustments are relatively small in nature, except when I see wages at the county jail that are going from 2.9 million to 4.1 million. That's a pretty large increase, and I guess I thought that the jail was had a relatively smaller population, so I'd be curious to know what the rationale for that is.
So on your first attachment, let me just bring it up. This is the one where we're recording the federal grants that we received from the state of Michigan for the reimbursement of April and May's payroll reimbursement. That included jail, okay? And then we also had the replacement of the August revenue sharing. So this is recording the revenues of all the grants that we received, and then on the expenditure side, we're increasing the expenditures on how we used it. So that increased all of these different departments' payroll and benefit budgets to show how we were using this grant and how we reported back to the state how we used it.
So is the fact that the wage number is higher a result of a different source of the revenues? Is that what you're saying?
Right, so we received a reimbursement. So we received revenue from the state of Michigan for the CARES Act for COVID, and we used it to help pay for payroll and benefits. So we increased our budget for the federal grants, and we increased our expenditure for the budget
You put my question to you another way. is there a substantial increase in the overall cost regardless of fund source
No.
to the jail? Okay,
No.
I think that's
Yeah,
really
I was
what
gonna
trying
say-
come to.
No, not at all.
If I may chime in too.
No,
that
that's
just
fine, Mike.
To
Thank you.
reiterate what she's saying there, we're supplanting.
Yeah.
In fact, we had real concerns whether the state and the Fed, do they realize this? Is that what they want us to do? Is that going to be acceptable? And it is. They come out and said it flat out. What they've done is they've shotgunned all this money out there, and frankly, a lot of counties, a lot of communities are struggling with those costs, how to justify those monies. So they said you can supplant, and that's what we've done.
That's what we're trying to do, so. Okay.
When we did the budget, he had a plan to get grant money, I believe?
Yes, mhm.
Is that happened yet?
Yes, he does have approval for that. Actually, I'm working with him trying to get the justice grant system. They, of course, at the time, whenever he's getting his grant, they change software or how they're doing it. So yes, he does have it, and it will get approved. It's not yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Tony?
Got a couple questions on page 2 of your budget adjustments, revenue various funds. Parks projects, transfer in from general fund, $278,000. When we passed the parks millage, the citizens decided, and I said this during our budget negotiations many times, the citizens decided we want the parks to have this money guaranteed to them, not under the influence of how the Board of Commissioners might move money around it, but the parks get this money guaranteed. And everybody thinks, I also think that's a good idea. So why are we taking money out of the general fund, putting it into the parks fund when the parks already has their millage funding?
This is Keeley Park. It's Keeley Park projects.
Okay, we
So
should
this
put
has
that in
nothing
the
to do
title
with the
then.
millage. The millage doesn't fund Keeley Park projects. It's Keeley,
Okay, where it
it's
says
Keeley
Parks
Park.
Project in red, that really should be Keeley Park?
Okay, well, my other one, I have it's Keeley Park projects. I changed it on another line. I probably need to update this, so it's clear. So I just want you to know the $278,000 has nothing to do with parks projects. That's their millage.
Okay,
These
my
are
question, 'cause it
Keeley
says
Park
parks.
projects. I'll fix
So,
that.
I'll just rephrase the question a little bit. I thought Keeley Park was done. Why, the funding had already been provided for that. What is this for?
Yeah, actually, what we're doing here is paying the bills that have come in. They're not all done. All the bills have not been paid. In fact, there's work down there. It's still not yet done. The fence hasn't been moved. You still see that barbed wire chain link fence around there? That's still got to go. There's some other things too.
Has the contractor been paid off in full?
No, some of this is costs associated with that, with Hoffman and others, as well as there's a big thing of grass that still needs to be turned into asphalt, which won't happen probably for a couple of years because we don't have the money, so we'll have to wait there. But no, there's still Keeley Park project costs.
The grass that should be turned to asphalt, you said that's a couple years away?
Well, it's whenever we get the money away.
And it's not part of the...
Not part of these costs, no.
Okay. Then, again, I talked about this during our budget discussions. Again, on page 2, Parks Donation Fund. Okay, so we've got a planned use of fund balance.
Yeah.
So that's people that have donated to the parks generously. And then we have this Boyce property.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is that,
So
ask Mike and the other commissioners, why is that Boyce money still going to parks? Parks has a millage.
Let me explain. So in order for me to transfer money out of the Parks Donation Fund, I had to set up a budget. That $82,000 is getting moved from the Parks Donation Fund over to the Public Improvement Fund, our capital fund. That's part of the whole budget amendment is to move that $82,000 out of the Parks Donation Fund. Reason why we have a planned use of fund balance is that's where it is right now. Part of it is. We've received some money this year, but in total, I'm thinking it's about $82,000 that will get moved over to the capital fund. And going forward, that money is going into the capital fund and not the parks donation fund anymore. So as requested. So I'm taking care of it with this budget amendment. There's just a lot of steps that have to happen in order for it to work and balance. But so.
All right, thank you for that explanation.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Any further questions? Rodney, Daniel?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right. We need a motion to approve the requested budget amendments and send them to the full board.
I'll move to recommend approval to the full board.
Need support?
Support.
Corey supported it. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the
Aye.
same.
All right.
Thank you, Daniel. Motion passes unanimously. Finance, you have another item here?
Looks like it.
Report.
Our September report. Let's see here. So with our September report, some things that I just want to point out. If you will notice that our year-to-date expenditure total percent is 72.2%, and so is our revenue, 72.7%. It's like really close with, so it's pretty much almost, our revenues and expenditures for September pretty much were the same. There's a slight revenue increase, and this because property taxes have come in, so it's an exciting time when September 15 rolls around. I start looking at all of that. It's just, I love seeing all that. So that's a positive thing with, so, it's just, again, it really is. It just is. So basically, too, I think, just reiterate what we've been talking about since this whole COVID thing came up, is that, it's been a very positive thing with our furloughs and with our revenue sharing, our payroll sharing, furlough, everything that we did back in December has reduced our cost. It did help us with our loss in our revenues, so it's all been a positive thing. And then now, and again, so with this budget amendment, once the board approves it, I'll get it posted. We'll have a really good idea where we're at. So it's just, but right now, it's pretty much where we're at is where I would expect for us to be right now. With the revenues that have come in, so, and the reduction of our expenditures. So, any questions regarding September?
Daniel, Rodney, you guys got questions? I can't see you on the board.
No questions for me, thank you. I'm good, thanks.
Yes, sir. Okay, that's, thank you for the report.
Okay, thanks.
Move on to item 4J, Administrator Controller updates to policy number 3220, nepotism.
Okay, sorry. The nepotism policy, we delayed the next three, JK and L, on the agenda. If you recall, back in October, we had sent these to the attorney, and the attorney made some significant changes, so we decided to just restart them at committee because of the changes that were made. The nepotism policy is the only policy that's an existing policy. The telecommute and the social media policy are both new, so that is why there is not a current policy attached to those. The version that is in there is what has been approved by our attorney. The nepotism policy, as directed by the committee in October, did go to the Anti-Discrimination Committee. They had an opportunity to review that, and Commissioner Pileski had some comments on that from the Anti-Discrimination Committee.
Go ahead, Commissioner Pileski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, the Anti-Discrimination Committee appreciates the opportunity to make mention of its views with respect to the policy. I think the only The only question or comment that the committee had, and it actually put that in the form of a motion to make a suggestion to this committee, is with respect to the very last paragraph, which relates to those departments to which the policy would apply. I think the language now is currently something along the order of this policy would apply to all departments with the exception of the sheriff, who has his own nepotism policy. I think the suggestion or the recommendation of the anti-discrimination committee was to state, instead of being an exception, is to state affirmatively to which departments the policy would apply. So the suggestion, I don't know if we had the language that we actually approved here, but it would say something like, this policy applies to all committee or all departments under the control of the Board of Commissioners. In other words, it would not necessarily apply to those departments run by a separately elected official. And so that's, I think generally, if I've got that right, Deb, I think that way, and Corey, you're on the committee as well. I think I have that right, so that's the suggestion from the Anti-Discrimination Committee. Thank you.
A question on that, then, if we have no control over their policy, and the policy doesn't hold up, the county's one that's going to get sued. So don't we need some kind of control there?
Oh, that's an excellent question, and I'm simply drawing forward the recommendation of I think the view of the Anti-Discrimination Policy Committee is that, and this is something we've kind of struggled with and discussed, is to whom would any policy that committee drafts apply? Okay, separately elected officials can thumb their nose if they choose to some committee, but I think the exposure to the county is certainly substantial.
I've often said it was easier to be a city manager than a county administrator. And I say that because as a city manager, all the department heads reported to the city manager. If I said, this is the policy the city council adopted, and we're going to live by it. It's not true in county government. There's a lot of elected officials that in a lot of ways operate autonomous from what we decide at this place here. And I know over the years, some have said, hey, to me personally, hey, you work for us, not for the sheriff or whomever, and very much true. But like I've always said to commissioners and anyone who will listen, it's go along to get along. I have to work with those elected officials to help them be successful, because it's hard for the county as a whole to be successful if we can't all be successful. So what we do is we create policies as that are common sense and are reasonable, that meet the letter of the law, and then in along a lot of ways, we work with the elected officials as we're developing those policies along the way, so that they have buy-in to it too. And I don't want to say we sell, but hey, isn't that always how life works that way? So we're convinced of the wisdom. There are times, though, when for whatever reason they feel that the policy is not in their best interest or their organization department, and where Commissioner Duckham is correct. If they choose not to adopt and therefore pursue something else, and we end up getting sued, it is the county commissioners that ultimately have to make the decision on how to resolve that lawsuit, meaning pay the bill. It is unfortunate, but it is part of county government in Michigan. And I believe Richard has comments he would like to make.
Mr. Chair, when you get a chance, I have a comment and a question as well.
Just as a point of information for the commissioners, I have in front of me the general order from the sheriff's anti-nepotism policy. The language is the same as what you're seeing, except for one paragraph, and the one paragraph at the end says, however, because of the nature of the position of the undersheriff and the confidential secretary, if persons in those positions marry another employee of Jackson County Sheriff's Office, one of the partners must resign. Everything else is the same. That's the difference. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say thank you to the Anti-Discrimination Committee for raising that issue. That's actually the same concern that I had in this policy, and appreciate the clarification. My only comment would be that from all of these departments, whether they're under the control of Mr. Overton or an elected official, if there's an issue and somebody decides to file a lawsuit, it's the county commissioners who deal with the issue anyway. Whether it's their policy or our policy that's been violated, whether they accept the policy or not, whether it's an issue that we were aware of or not, regardless of what happens, it's still, the buck still lands on our plate. Regardless, is the only comment that I would make, and I would be in agreement with the recommendation for the changes of the language that the Anti-Discrimination Committee recommended for this policy as well.
Mr. Overton, do they send their policy to legal for make sure it's adequate? The sheriff department.
Well, there's a lot of things they should.
Well, maybe they should pay the damages if we get sued.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree, but that's not the reality. The law is very clear. At the end of the day, the buck stops with the county commissioners, and as you know, there's been many times we've had to swallow hard and settle a suit, and that had nothing to do with any of the departments that you directly manage. In fact, that's more often than not the case. But the reality is, I think Commissioner Mahoney is on the money. The buck stops here, and we have to pay the bill if necessary. So that's why it's really important, especially for what I call internal services, and that is myself, HR, IT, finance, all these internal service departments that work with all these other elected officials to do what we can to bring them along, help them be successful, help them buy into and be a part of the county as described by the county commissioners. So, it is true that sometimes there's perceived, at least, competing interests, be it through an elected official and the county commissioners. I'm generally that soft, squishy thing in between those two rocks, and I try to make it all fit together nicely in a wall that is strong and consistent.
Have you seen their policy?
I've seen all their policies at one time or another. Doesn't mean I have them all
Question,
memorized.
does it exceed or come up short compared to our policy?
No, that policy's fine, yeah.
The sheriff's
In fact,
is-
it's more stringent, as I think was indicated.
The sheriff's policy is more stringent.
This one, yes.
Okay,
So it's good.
all right. Go ahead.
So I don't have a question as much as I do a comment. I brought it up in the anti-discrimination policy group, but stated that I'd be bringing it up as commissioner in the meeting. I personally don't think the policy goes far enough in terms of nepotism. From what I'm seeing, it's supervisory role and a subsidiary in that department. I personally don't think any relative should be working in the same department, because sometimes a key employee who works with the supervisor has influence, carries weight, and can say, hey, hire my brother, hire my sister, hire my daughter, hire my son. So I personally think when it comes to nepotism, you shouldn't have family members in the same department.
Mr. Pulaski.
Thank you. And no, I think another observation that was made in the Anti-Discrimination Policy Committee is that the policy draft as proposed defines a relative in a much more broad way than our current policy does. In fact, it seems to me that a single date between two people in a department could cause the application of this policy, okay, because that is a potentially romantic relationship, which I think is part of the definition of relatives in the proposed policy. So we're moving, I think, with this draft toward what Commissioner Kennedy is suggesting, that being a more broad policy of avoiding nepotism within the county. And I think the policy as proposed is pretty good, and I plan to support it. Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? If not, we need a motion to approve the update on the
Just
proposal.
just one question, Mr. Chair. So I'm just curious about the change that was recommended by the Anti-Discrimination Committee on that last clause and changing the language in there. Would we need a motion to make that change, or how would we go about making that change to that particular part?
Need a motion.
Okay, well, I would move to accept the policy with the changes that was recommended by the Anti-Discrimination Committee.
Why don't,
He's recommended the
I think we need to wait for the committee to complete their job.
No.
Talking about.
Okay, we have a motion and support.
Discussion. Deb, do you have the record of what that motion was so we know exactly what we'd be voting on?
What I wrote down was the policy applies to all departments under control of the Board of Commissioners. And I can make those changes for the Tuesday night meeting if that's the wish of the board.
Repeat that.
This policy applies to all departments under control of the Board of Commissioners.
which is all you can.
Go ahead, Earl.
And so, although I supported the motion and was part of the discussion at the Anti-Discrimination Policy Committee, I think the information we've heard from administration today is, regardless of what we put in this policy today, we as the Board of Commissioner on the hook for the settlement of any lawsuit that may result from a violation of this policy. So we can say what we like about excluding the policy from the application of any other department. The fact of the matter is, we're exposed in any event. I don't mind passing I think as a practical matter, what we've discussed here today, the two paragraphs mean about the same thing. So I'm not even sure yet how I'm going to vote on the motion to amend. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I'm not sure what the motion.
Not either.
Remove the exemption.
Okay, I have a question or a statement on that. We have a new incoming sheriff.
Bill, if I may.
What if his policy changes?
Bill, if I may.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
I would recommend that the maker of the motion suggest that it be referred to the Administrator Controller's office to be cleaned up and adjudicated, and then be put on Tuesday night's meeting so we can vote on the rewritten policy as it's correctly written. Are you comfortable with that, Daniel?
Not exactly, because I just don't understand what the difficulty is here. I mean, we stated that it really doesn't matter what the policy says. The buck still lands on our plate, no matter if the policy is adopted or not. We've stated that the Sheriff's Department has a nepotism policy that is, except for one paragraph, almost exactly the same as what's written. And the only thing that's being requested is that there's not a single department that's given an exclusion from this. And then it's not even like the change is not even asking for them to be included. It's just saying that the policy applies to all of the departments that the county commissioners are responsible for. So I guess I'm not, unless I'm misunderstanding, unless there's something I don't understand here, or I'm missing something, Chairman Shotwell. I don't want to approve something to go to the Tuesday meeting from here. I wouldn't be in support of it without that change. I don't understand what the problem is with the change itself. Unless somebody can clarify that for me, I would be okay with that.
All I was asking, Daniel, was that you give the administration the ability to put the language in the policy. I'm not asking for you to vote on anything. I'm asking you to redirect it to the Administrator Controller's office so the language can be cleaned up, and we could stop talking around and around and around. That's all. If you want to continue debate, then we'll stay right here and continue debate. That's fine.
I haven't been debating. I just made a recommendation. But I mean, if you think that that's the best route to go is to redirect it to the administrator's office, I would ask that it come back to committee for approval, opposed to going to Tuesday night, because by Tuesday night it's going to be too late for any revisions at that point. Is the only concern I have, Steve. That's the concern that I have, is that sending it to the administrator's office with the intentions for it to come back Tuesday for Tuesday night's approval. At that point, it's going to be like the train has already left the station, in my opinion. But again, whatever you guys feel like the best route to handle this would be, I just really don't see what the big difference is in this situation.
Well, you can have a special meeting on Tuesday night of your committee, and then it can come back to your committee, and you can discuss it Tuesday night before the full board gets a chance to vote on it. Whatever you're comfortable with. You can redirect it to next month's committee meeting, Daniel, so that way it can be cleaned up. But I don't think everybody sees the wording in the document. I heard 3 different ways to talk about it. That's all I'm saying. I'm comfortable with whatever.
I'll take your recommendation to have it sent back to the administrator's office. I will be okay with that and look for it on Tuesday's agenda.
Just changing it from saying that the sheriff's excluded to saying this policy applies to everyone under the authority of the commissioners, which is not the sheriff's department. So it's saying...
Oh, it doesn't say that?
No. It is, the way it says is the sheriff, except for, it specifically excludes the sheriffs, rather than all electeds, or... Okay, so... I'm good with Commissioner Mahoney's amendment, and I'm fine with voting on it. It's the exact same meeting. It's just taking this language out and placing the language that Deb wrote, which, in all honesty, will exclude the sheriff's department and every other elected official, but it's not specifically saying it. So it's putting the message out there that we'd like everyone to follow it. So I don't have a problem with it. Support.
The amendment's what's on the floor.
Support.
Vote, all in favor of the amendment that's on the floor right now, indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Now we...
Vote on the
Nepotism policy?
Now to
vote on the policy.
Okay, now we're going to okay the nepotism policy as amended.
Support.
We need a motion and support, okay.
move to recommend the approval, yeah?
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those passes unanimously. Thank you. Well, the other two ones, the K and L are not ready to go yet?
Yes, K is a new policy. It's a telecommute policy. We previously did not have a policy with regard to people working at a site other than one of our buildings. So this offers the opportunity to do that, especially in today's climate with COVID. So this is a new proposed policy. So yes, it is ready to move forward if that's the will of the board.
This will allow employees to work at home if need be? Okay. Discussion? Okay, if there's no discussion, need a motion and support to send this to the full board?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. Move on to item L.
Similarly, this again is a new policy. It has been reviewed as the other two were by our attorney. So this is a new policy proposed from our IT department.
Discussion? Okay, if there's no discussion, I need a...
Chair,
Hold up.
Mr. Chair, I've got a couple of questions on this policy.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Okay. So I'm curious. Well, one, I kind of feel like some areas in this is a little bit only. I got to pull up. I've got a document that from when I reviewed this yesterday that I made some notes on that I'd like to pull up. If possible, I'll tell you what. I'll take my questions, my specific questions offline, and I don't know who I should direct them to. Should I direct them to the IT department? Should I direct those questions directly to the administrator's office? But I've just got some concerns about some of the areas in this policy. Seem like it is a little controlling on the employee's rights to freedom of speech, especially on their own social media. There's some areas that I have some concerns about. So I guess that would be my question is like, where should I direct my questions to on this particular policy?
The Administrator Controller's Office, Daniel. So that way it gets shared with all commissioners.
Oh, okay, absolutely. That I guess because I've got several questions on this one, and I guess one question I would like to have answered now is like how many other social media policies did we review before this particular policy was brought forth to the committee?
This, this policy came from the IT department from Michelle. There is an MMRMA one, that's our insurance company. There's one that they recommend, and I believe she obtained some of the content from there. But this policy actually, for the most part, was written by our attorneys. So, as I indicated, the proposed policy that Michelle had provided was changed by the attorneys. So, there's some significant differences in the one that Michelle gave us. So for the most part, this was written by the attorneys.
Okay, I'll follow up with the questions and the concerns that I have because I don't want to delay the meeting with all of the tons of questions that I have about this particular policy. But I will say that at this time I won't be in support of it due to my concerns about the violation of the freedom of speech and how I think we're kind of limiting and overlooking some of the areas in this policy that, in my opinion, are kind of overstepping. But that's just my personal opinion of the policy. And then I'm also curious, they spoke a lot about employees who have the right to speak on behalf of the county, but I'm not sure how many official county social media platforms we are actually using. So that's another thing that I would have questions about. Because most of the social media platforms there are a lot of controls that you can put on that page itself. Like if the county was to open up a Facebook page, there's a lot of restrictions that you can put on that page itself that would prevent from some of the things that I think were mentioned in the policy itself. So I just have some questions that I guess I'll take offline. But if we're looking to move this policy to Tuesday, at this time I wouldn't be in support of it without some further investigation and some questions being answered.
Daniel, have you read the whole policy from beginning to end?
I sure did.
And you don't see a problem with employees communicating with other employees while they're supposed to be working?
No, I don't have a problem with employees communicating with other employees or on their social media while they're working. Of course, I think that they should be working while they're working. But Phil, in some of these policies, it states that the employees are not to be friends or fans of individuals who are being provided services by the county. There's several areas that I have concerns on this particular policy, Phil, and I'll express those concerns in detail. But again, I don't want to belabor our meeting with the tons of questions that I have. It's going to take me a second to find that document. I highlighted and redlined a lot of different things that I have concerns with, and I'll be forwarding those to the administrator's office for some answers. This policy is more than just about employees not being able to use county resources to manage their social media sites or being on social media during work hours. This is deeper than that, and I think that it almost could be split up into two separate policies even. One for what the county plans to do for social media that's official Jackson County Commission or Jackson County like social media platforms, and then I think there could even be a separate policy for employees in what we find or what we put out there as employee rules and regulations for social media. I definitely think it's a necessity in today's world. Social media, especially with the way COVID and everybody is so distant from each other right now, and working from home and working from anywhere, this is a much-needed policy. And I also think that it's about time for the county to step up and create some social media platforms as a way to communicate with our community. However, I think that it would be two different policies, in my opinion. One that would be for county, and then one that would be for employees. But again, I have some concerns about some of the language in there and how I feel like it's like restrictive to employees and what they can or can't do on their personal social media. So that's just my opinion, Phil. But again, I definitely read this front to back and highlighted it and wrote a lot of notes on what I have concerns about. But I'll share those. And at this time, I won't be in support of it unless you guys will entertain a motion to send this back to the county administrator's office for further discussion and possibly bringing it back in December.
Daniel, please direct all that, your concerns to the county administrator's office. Okay?
Yep, thank you.
All right, board, we need direction here.
Mr. Chair, I move to table pending the discussion that Commissioner Mahoney might have with the administrator.
Okay, is there support for tabling this motion till it's made clear?
Postpone, don't table. Postpone, don't table. Table takes too much work to get it back up. Postpone it to a specific date. That way we can get answers and questions solved, please.
Mr. Chair, I move to postpone to next month's committee meeting.
Okay, we'll postpone until...
I will support that.
Okay, we have a motion and support to postpone it till next month's committee meeting. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye? Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion passed 4-1. Thank you, board. Okay, next up is the claims for the month of October. Get them signed, they're right here on the table. I don't see any other minutes. The December reporting schedule, IT semi-annual, equalization semi-annual, finance monthly, treasurer quarterly, LDFAs, and EG semi-annuals. So we'll move on to item 6, that would be public comment. Any public comment? No public comment? Committee member comment? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.